I'd like to call to order this meeting, Planning Commission. This is Monday, April the 4th at 5 o'clock. Our first order of business is invocation. Mr. Nix, would you please?
Yes, sir. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county employees as they perform their duties to ensure that they return home safe to their families after every shift. We ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work together to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Would you like to lead us in the pledge, please? Would you lead us, sir?
I'll let y'all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our next business item is the approval of minutes from March the 21st. Do I have a motion to?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, any?
Mr. Chairman, there is we need a motion to amend the packet. Originally did not contain Mr. Gallen's minutes from the Junk Commission Subcommittee, and those have been included in what's in front of you now. So we just need a motion to amend what was.
I make a motion to amend the agenda for the staff's recommendations as stated. Minutes.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now back to the minutes as amended. I'll need do we need a motion on that?
You've got a second already, so you can go straight to discussion.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes?
I just won't be able to vote since I was absent from that meeting.
Right. So all those in favor of the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes.
And one abstention.
One abstention, yes. Commission member comments?
Am I on the agenda for the development issues, or is it going to be under comments?
I think we can have it at the active subdivision under review. We can probably do that at that time since it's pertaining to the same subject.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, no commission member comments, staff comments.
No, this time.
All right. Public comment, we have one email or letter. If Mr. James will read that for us,
That
I
is
appreciate it.
specific for the sidewalk, so that is a.
Oh, it is for the sidewalks?
Yeah.
It just says, okay. All right, so we'll wait. All right, so now, Mr. Smith, it's your game now. The active,
Mr. Chairman,
well,
are we going to have public comments on that and let Mr. Pat speak?
I'm sorry, I skipped it.
Yep.
Right now, we got subdivisions under review, so I'm gonna let Pat do his comments first, and then we'll get with you, James, and you can go into the rest of it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I still have the concern about the rapid growth and development in the county. Talked to a number of constituents. It is a concern in the county of some of the large-scale developments that's happening, especially the high-density areas. I'm not aware of that we have any way of controlling some of that. I've kind of suggested, folks, that we maybe do some impact fees because we're going to have increased fire protection. We have to have increased police, sheriff protection, EMS protection, all this stuff kind of is going to be at an increase at taxpayer expense. So I kind of would like for us to review and look into that. I've been told some of the impact fees can be used for some of those things, some of them it can't be used. It's just an inevitable matter of time that one of these large-scale developments is going to be put on a county road. A lot of our county roads are very small and would be very inadequate to handle large flows of traffic. If it's on a state road, maybe the state would do something about it, but some of these large-scale developments are being developed in some places that ingress, egress, traffic flow, just all those numerous issues are going to come into play. I've noticed, of course, everybody watches the news every night. There's not a night that goes by that there's not a county somewhere. Right now, it's Lawrence County is being inundated by growth from Greenville. A large-scale development's going in on a very narrow little county road. They did a traffic count. The developer used the information at 4:30 in the morning of a traffic flow of 10 cars on this little road. So you got to watch for those little things, so that when they turned the info into the county, they said the traffic flow was 10 cars per so many hours, and it was at 4:30 in the morning. Some of the local folks found that out. So we need to make sure that our community has a adequate time of notification if something's coming in their neighborhood, that they have an opportunity to speak and be able to yay or nay or voice their concerns about a large-scale development in their neighborhood. I'm not naive to know that growth is going to happen. I know it's going to happen, but it needs to be, we need to get a hold of it. It's really rampant right now, and a lot of people are making a lot of money, but a lot of people is losing value of their properties. You know, when you got a pretty nice house on a 5-acre lot and 40's going next door on 10 acres, stacked together and going straight up. I used to kind of be before that, but not now. So I think density issues we need to look into. I know Richland County, Lexington County is doing that. They're doing some density regulations. So something like that we need to look into, Mr. Chairman. You got to think, you know, we got, if these folks coming in, I don't see our school population growing much, so it's not families that's moving here. I think it's maybe retirees, people that are maybe single or whatnot, don't have large families, so our school population is not growing, but our overall county population is growing, and we need to make it a good place to come still. So let's see if we can kind of get the ball rolling on getting some things done. And you know, I've talked to some members of council, and I threw the word impact fee out there. I threw the word bonds against some of these developers that are building a subdivision. Everybody knows, we've seen it. Everybody here is old enough to realize what happens when an economy turns. A developer just getting his truck and ride west and leave it with the bank, and then it sits there for years unfinished. So a bond would help the county, to my understanding the way that works, it'll help somebody have an opportunity to either finish it or get it to a point that it's not, don't become an eyesore, which has happened before in the county. So we would appreciate support from other commissioners on this board and council and the planning commission to help me understand and help me be able to share with the community their concerns. That's about all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Pat. James?
Yeah, so inside your backup and the agendas you have before you tonight, we've got subdivisions that are active right now in development and in review. The cutoff I used was 25 lots or more. And I'm going to pull those up on here right now so you can start to walk through all of them, but you've also got the hard copy in front of you. And then this is the zoning map. Kind of give you a general idea of the lots that are being divided, the pieces of them that are getting cut out, and kind of what they're doing with them. So the first one, this is the Cliffs Marina. This is one of the Cliffs properties. Got this piece right up here that they're cutting off. This is 25 single lots.
What's our other lots?
These, let's see.
Around an acre apiece. Up to
These are all over an acre.
Okay.
Except, no, that's 0.9, so close to an acre, 0.8.
Just on the lake?
And I did have a real quick question. The cul-de-sacs, are those,
So this is what has been submitted, this is in comments. Cul-de-sacs need a 45-foot radius, so these 25 have already received comments that those are not acceptable. But we do have some regulation that we require, that's basically for emergency services.
right?
So you can get a fire truck in there that can turn around.
That was my only question. The cul-de-sacs look small.
They are. And this is just what they've submitted to us, this is kind of where it is in their preliminary sketch plan, or their sketch plan, no, preliminary plan. And what I thought, we'd just go through each one of these, and y'all, yes, sir.
It's, you got these student housing down here. Can we skip down to this color page, it's down close to the end? I noticed this, Ferry Bale Pond, it's got yellow houses, red houses, down close to the end of the packet. You've got this dotted line around some of that. Can you explain that?
This one?
There you go.
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm sorry, I don't have a monitor, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You
Yeah.
can look on the map.
Thank you.
So, this is the cliffs, or I'm sorry, this is the pier, their student development. That is the groundwater monitoring area. This was an old mill site, and there is groundwater intrusion of some chemicals that are gonna have to be mitigated. They are working, they have a consent order from DHEC, they have a voluntary cleanup contract. Basically, the site was contaminated, so they're doing remediation on it. That remediation is going on public notice. So right now, that portion, we're waiting for some DHEC information to come in on whether or not that would be buildable, but that's on their sketch plan. Yeah,
So theoretically, if these houses are built there, we don't know how effective this pollution cleanup is gonna be, but we're gonna put houses on it. And these young people are gonna be living in them. How many people are living in one of these yellow houses tentatively, do you know?
they have a density up there, I think those are 4 bedrooms.
Old JP
So we'll put a
side.
double bunk bed in there and get 8 people in there.
Steve.
$27.
That's a bunch.
But if I understand correctly, that this is a remediation process before construction.
Right now, we're waiting to hear back from DHEC. They will be the one to make that determination. Yes, sir.
Would this go to county sewer, or are they using their own treatment site there?
They're in treatment.
They're at the old plant, they're using that system. So does all this pier development use that system?
Yeah, they have 3, actually, that are on our packet tonight. So they have the pier north, south, and this is the student.
Yes. So all that'll be on that one, there won't be no burden onto the system we have?
Correct.
Okay. Well, can I just bring up a point to the rest of the commissioners? I think at this point, this is probably far enough along, there's nothing that we could do to alleviate any of this. But how many of you has been down Cherry Road lately? That's a prime example of a road that can't handle traffic.
That's right.
So, fortunately, I guess for us, this is gonna be on the eastern edge of our county, and most of this traffic, the revenue from these folks are gonna go into Pickens County. If you kind of look at it that way, these kids are gonna go into Clemson and spend money, or going in, but it's an impact on our county. So, just, that's a prime example of a road that's way, just overburdened. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Well, you get Mountain View Road the same way with those big subdivisions going in over there, less than half a mile apart.
So how do we plan for the future?
That is a commission question. It's totally up to you guys right now, so you can,
Do you want to form a group? Do you want to just,
Well, I think that's the planning commission as a whole, that some of these are filters that we're supposed to be looking at.
that's right.
Now, this is high-density housing, which affordable housing is something that we continue to kick the can on. So, I mean, I hate to talk too bad about this because this is accomplishing, in a way, that process. Now, this wasn't sold to be that, but if we're talking about affordable housing, it's gonna look like that somewhere.
You can have affordable housing and not have it a pocket of, say, this number of houses. You can have them in smaller enclaves, so you don't, it doesn't look so those occupants don't feel like they're in a lower, it's difficult to say as to a different socioeconomic
That's
layout.
already, Mr. Chairman, can I make another comment, please? It's to my understanding, gentlemen, that there's already an excess of student housing for the Clemson area anyway. I don't quite understand the developer's thought process here, because I know these guys do a lot of research before they do these things, but for the number of students that's in Clemson now, there's more housing than students. I've kind of heard that going around a little bit. Now, don't fact check me because I don't have that in front of me. Affordable housing, Mr. Smith, you brought up, is a very good question. That boat has already sailed. And the reason I say that is Mr. Johnson, you may correct me, but I believe somewhere in the 240 range for a new house in the county now. Maybe. A man making $20 an hour and a wife and 2 kids can't afford a $240,000 house. But that's nothing we can control. We don't build houses. The county don't build houses. So I don't know how we can facilitate that we're going to have workforce housing, which they are a huge need for it. And the picture is painted because for a few months ago we talked about campers and people living in campers, people living in utility buildings. They have no other choice. I've talked to a lot of people that are living in a camper. Maybe going to put a utility building out. We've talked about that extensively. Unfortunately, they have no other choice. And I was an advocate of getting rid of them or trying to find some way to control it. Some people live in them because they have no choice, or that's their high water mark to live in a camper. I'm happy. But there's some people living there that don't have no choice. I know talked to a gentleman today, works for the city of Walhalla, living in a camper because they were going to build a house, got the site. The cost of the house went up, Mr. Johnson, 40, 50, 60% in a matter of a year, and they're out of the picture. Just to give you another little fact, and I'm sorry about being long-winded, I looked at a 16 by 80 mobile home the other day just to get some prices. $96,000. A 28 by 40 mobile home, $157,000. That's out of workforce price range. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. So affordable housing is something that the county has been in need of addressing, especially as prices are going up and whatnot. The county, while we don't build houses, we do control certain things. And right now, affordable housing is mainly in the municipalities which we stay out of. But I will give you a quick example of something that I looked at in Seneca, in that municipality, and we do have controls over. It was a particular zoning. And it was a zoning that was pushing apartments. Well, to me, the best use in that section of neighborhood wasn't apartments. It was were adjoining walls. It was actually little cottages, freestanding individual cottages. But because of the zoning, you could get a little cottage in there, but if the wall wasn't adjoining, you had to have 25-foot separation to the property line and then another 25 foot before you could put the next little cottage. Well, in that 50-foot, you could have put 3 cottages that would have made for affordable housing from a development standpoint, but the zoning control itself prevented it. It was on sewer. You could have easily put cottages in there, which again would have been affordable because you're using it on tight land mass, but it wasn't able to be done because the zoning was set up in such a way that it required an extensive setback. So we do have controls over those parts from a standpoint of what are our setbacks within our particular zones. And right now, again, affordable housing is typically going to more of a municipality, but it is something that the county is going to have to start looking at, specifically because of the growth that's hitting certain areas off of Highway 85.
When we covered this section, when we had them up here, the first thing they said was sewer. If we don't have the sewer, we can't get the multifamily housing in there. So the sewer is one restriction. And of course, the other is affordability of the land. So you've got to go into multifamily type housing is what you've got to. But again, I go back to, you don't want to have a large complex that is trying to capture a certain socioeconomic group, for so-called affordable housing. A lot of it comes back to something that nobody wants to say, and it has to do with zoning.
Yes, sir.
Nobody wants to mention it,
Yes, sir.
but that elephant is in the room. And these developments that are coming in and eating up your agriculture land and whatever, it's a concern. And that might help, but it's an education process.
Mr. Chair, can I have a little more time, please? Thank y'all for being patient with me. It's to my understanding, and some of you guys can clarify this for me, that we can zone or recommend zoning in just certain pockets. It don't have to be countywide. I'm not up to par on that information. I've talked to a lot of folks, and that's when you paint a different picture of zoning, and Mr. Johnson, you and I have talked about this before in the past. I believe when it happened, when we tried this a few years ago, just didn't do a good job, as Mr. Smith said, of educating the public. But I believe now, I think it's a different world.
Let me ask you one more thing, just to answer that. You're correct. Zoning is something that I think is a sour taste even coming out of my mouth, because you're dealing with people's personal property rights and you're exercising over those rights. There was a time several years ago that we said, okay, if you want to electively zone yourself, especially within the agriculture, to kind of protect and insulate yourself and your neighbors will insulate themselves as well from some of this high-density development where you've got these 200 homes that just took over compared to the one farmer's vote on the road that he used to drive his combine up and down easily, and now he's stuck. But even with that electives, you can zone yourself if you want to. It got shot down both by the community at large and by the council, which was a protection mechanism. So just be aware that education is a process on that.
Well, like I say, within the last 3 to 5 years, a lot has changed. And I think some people are more willing to listen, maybe, a little more open-minded. And we got to inform them, maybe this is for your protection, not for us to control you. So,
James,
Yes, sir.
doesn't our zoning ordinance, it doesn't allow for spot zoning?
Well, spot zoning is illegal, period. You
So, I
cannot
mean-
spot zone. That's not a county ordinance, that is,
But you have to have so much land before you
Correct.
can
Yeah.
change the zoning on it.
yeah, there is already a rezoning process that exists in our code ordinance on the zoning, in chapter 38. So groups of parcels can get together, and I don't have the,
Right.
land mass in my head, but we can look it up real quick. But yeah, if a group of homeowners or a group of property owners wanted to petition to rezone their property, they could.
But not just individual
No.
owners unless they have that amount, if they have 100 acres or whatever the amount may be.
50, something like that.
If they have owned that much land, then they can change the zoning on that land, but it has to be a certain size before they can do that.
Oh, is it that much?
I'd have to look at it to confirm, and you cannot do just an individual parcel.
I thought it was small.
well, that'd be good to know, to have that information out, James. I'm sure the
Excuse me.
local paper would print that happily and gladly. And if we could get that word out there, even out of this meeting before we leave, that if you got some neighbors and y'all got 100 acres you can put together to protect yourself, we got to make sure we know we're not controlling you. We want to protect you from an agricultural aspect. It don't necessarily have to be agriculture. We got some folks that's got 5 or 10 acres that don't farm, they don't do anything, but just have a little land. And they don't want those there's a winner and loser in all those situations, and, I think the loser in the long run for the county wide is, I don't foresee that we could ever collect enough tax money from these individual lots to offset the impact for having to add another fire station, had to add another, 10 more sheriff deputies to cover, 10 more thousand people. So, there's some things that the impact money can be used for, some things it cannot. So, but I know, police protection, that it can be used. Road improvement, it cannot be used, because that's gas tax money. So, but we need to clarify all those things for folks and, give them an opportunity to, voice their concerns.
Let me mention something about impact fees. Usually, they're tied to water and sewer usage. The county is not in that business. So you have to go to a capital improvement plan and look at that and review that. It's a very involved process because the county is not involved directly in the sewer and water.
Yes, sir.
And that's usually a thing that's impacted the most. So there's a little more to it.
You mentioned earlier, about this sewer. I've heard both sides of that story. I've heard developers and people that are saying that the sewer is actually holding back development at this time, that it's kind of hindering it, curtailing it to some extent. I've also been told if they ever expand, it'll be like the Wild West at that time, because they have somewhere to go, they have sewer. So from my point of view and my constituents' point of view, the bottleneck at the sewers actually is a blessing for us right now, because it's buying us some time. But if the sewer authority ever decides to expand and put some new lines and upgrade what they have, what I've been told is actually, these are the words, quote, Pat, there'll be no man left standing, because it'll be on then. Sorry for the crude words, but I just speak what's on my heart and what I'm told. But thank y'all guys for listening.
Here's that small area rezoning. I've got it pulled up on the screens for those of y'all who can see it in front of you. I'll just read it to you real quick. Any property owner or group of property owners of a parcel or parcels with a combined minimum ownership of at least 50 acres may petition county council for initial rezoning. So no parcel may be included within the rezoning petition under this method, which is not contiguous to at least one other parcel that is included in the rezoning petition. Contiguous properties are those properties which are adjacent to one another and share a common border. And that goes on, but basically, they all have to be touching each other essentially, and you have to have at least 50 acres. And then they can apply to council for rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, James.
Yes, sir. Did y'all want to go back up and continue going through each of these subdivisions?
Please, I would like to. Mr. Chairman, if that's okay with you?
Yes.
I didn't mean to.
Okay. This was the first one we started looking at. This is the first Marina. Do you have any other questions about this one? We move on to the next one.
No questions.
This is Kiwi Snakes. So this is another, I think this is 35. And these are all approximately an acre or greater.
And that's also within the cliffs?
Yes. So these first three are all Old Cliffs properties in the same area. It's one developer, 3 separate subdivisions.
There was land extending beyond, right there in the center of the page, it looks like.
Yes.
I couldn't tell the elevation level of that land, but I could tell the width of that road had dropped down significantly.
Yeah, so this is a proposed 14-foot wide asphalt driveway, a private driveway to access those last 2 homes. So that, again, the cul-de-sac would not be sufficient.
What's the land beyond that? Is that
not something-
developable?
We don't make a determination as to developable or not. Without having contours on there that are marked, hard to tell. It might drop off, might be a big rock. I don't know.
So what happens if they come back at a later date and want to develop that last bit? Does that road width change?
So right now, they're accessing the two lots that are there.
Right.
Lot 11 and lot 12. So you can serve 3 lots off of a driveway. So if that was developable, you could potentially put one more house on a driveway and still be a driveway.
But that's like 7 or 8, maybe 10 acres there. So if they did develop that into more stuff, do they have to come back and widen that road?
They would.
Okay.
If they wanted to put more than one more dwelling out there, they would. They'd have to.
I got a comment, please. You made an interesting statement there. We can't determine if the land's developable or not.
Correct.
So, that appalls me, guys, that the county has no say-so on the books, or we got no ordinances, regulations, or anything that we can say, maybe you shouldn't consider this site. We have no power, no.
If they meet the minimum standards, then they meet them.
What's typically the comment when you say minimum standards to folks? Do they, oh, these are too harsh, these are pretty easy, they're erroneous, they're...
The thing we get the most pushback about is setbacks, which is probably the biggest burden the county has.
I know y'all thinking I'm putting a lot of work on y'all in the future, but it just shocks me, guys, that this is obviously lake property. 15 years ago, if a lot was too steep, somebody said, well, you can't build there. That don't happen these days. And it just shocks me that we cannot, I guess that might be property control or land control to folks. That's shocking to me that we can't say you can't build there, you know. Yes, sir.
We still have something called personal property rights, and I would sure hate to be told I couldn't build on my own land.
Well, I respect that. I'm with you. But there's a little 5-acre tract for sale down on Highway 11 that a bank owns out of Arizona, that they had a big field day there a couple of weeks ago and trying to push 5 acres. Well, I live next to it and I know it's a wetland, and I know when it rains it gets water on it. But they were going to get somebody on that 5-acre lot that was unsuspecting. So could this bank come along and say, well, we can't sell it, so we're going to develop it, and it's a wetland? Could we not come out and say, oh, I don't know about that?
If it is a FEMA registered floodplain, then we would have them go by the Floodplain Development Standard, which is in the code ordinance. Basically, they have to build, so if you couldn't build in floodplains, there'd be no development on the beaches and all the beach houses wouldn't be there. There's just a higher standard you have to build to. So if there's an established base flood elevation, you have to build to a minimum 36 inches above it. If you're getting any kind of loan to develop the property, you have to maintain federal flood insurance. And those two things typically make construction more expensive and then make maintaining it more expensive, which is a barrier to entry for developing. But we don't tell them they can't, they just have to follow those guidelines.
Thank you.
James, all of these, here that's got the water, are they all in the lake overlay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Every one of them. Y'all move on to the next one?
Yep.
Yes, please.
This is the last of the Cliffs properties. This is another, this one's 26, and they're calling this one Cliffs Tip. And again, very similar to the last one we looked at. I think the smallest lot on here is just under an acre, 0.8 something. And they've got 26 of them.
Can we go to the next one?
Is everybody good? Okay. Go. Next one is Cooper Mill. This is gonna be on 2 pages. Sorry, my computer's frozen right now.
Could I ask a quick question on that last
Yes,
three? Those are all gonna be septic tanks?
They would, yeah.
Okay.
Well water. Could you give me an idea where we're at county-wise on this new one?
Yep.
We on?
1 second, sorry, I'm having some technical issues with.
Oh, here we go.
Well, you know, they do those mass housing.
Okay, these 2 sheets are combined, so this is the whole thing.
This is subdivision on Mountain Road, right there at Claremont Road, correct?
What's the total number of lots there?
I think this is 175.
Yep.
Can you go back to the county map?
Yes, sir.
Everybody's speechless.
A lot of houses in a small area.
I've been by there. There's 88 acres, correct? Or somewhere in that,
78.
78 acres, and they're putting 175 houses there.
In 5 years, Mountain Road will look like Cherry Road. There's a very dangerous curve right here where there's numerous accidents.
Yep.
I got a friend that owns that pasture there. There's more cars in the pasture than cows sometimes. I think, I have no answer, guys, but somewhere, I don't know how do you look into these situations before these problems arise. The intersection down there at Highway 11 at the Bannerland store goes across the Sea Critter Road or Sea Ritter Road, an extremely dangerous intersection. I don't understand how these things are not looked into before this happens.
Well, you were talking about country roads. Claremont Road is just an old country road. It's not
I know I was raised on
It's
that
not gonna
road. I used to ride
withstand-
bicycles on it.
this extra traffic plus the other subdivision that's right up above that. And Mountain Road is not that great a road. I mean, both of them I think are state roads, but they're not built to withstand all this extra traffic. And that's not the only one. There's others that's gonna come around on that road as well eventually.
James, from what I can see, it looks like there's only one way in and one way out. Is that right?
I think there should be
Excuse me.
2 based
Oh,
on the number,
okay.
yeah.
I just couldn't see it.
They sewer there on that.
One's on Mountain and the other one's on Claremont, or is it? Straighten me out, I can't tell where the exits are. Where do they?
One is on the first side, first one has it here, second one has it down at the bottom. So you have to look at both pages to see.
Yeah.
Over 100 lots, you have to have 2.
Oh, okay, I see it. Thank you.
Would this be on sewer? Because they sewer there.
I couldn't tell off the top of my head. I did not look at what they're.
When I saw the property
I
is
would
sold,
assume it is on sewer just based on the.
What's the
lot.
size of the lots, average? What's,
These are anything from a little over a quarter acre to a little around a half an acre.
yeah, they'd have to be on sewer.
so, a question I would have in this, if these are going on to the sewer, would the developer had to got, I'm sure, way in advance where they invested into it, they would have had to make sure the sewer authority would take on that load?
Correct, that is their responsibility to confirm that there is sewer available for them.
Right.
So if I may for just 1 second, I'm just gonna give you a little bit on the process. Once they apply to us, we're the facilitators of it. We don't only do the zoning of it. The subdivision comes in and it goes to fire, it goes to roads and bridges, it goes to the joint regional sewer authority, addressing. We all look at this at the same time. Then we all put our input in, and once we get from sketch, it goes to a preliminary. A lot of these are only I don't even think they're at preliminary yet.
Most of these
yet.
are at sketch. This is not.
So everybody does look at it, and before we sign off on it, everybody else has to sign off on it. 10 or more, we ask for that traffic study, whether it's county or state. Again, we can't choose who they use. We only require that traffic study to be uploaded.
While you're on traffic study, could I ask a question? And James, you may have to tell us, but, okay, so you've done a traffic study and you put it in, and who's to decide subjectively, whether or not they should be able to build there because of
So
the
Roads and
traffic?
Bridges reviews the traffic study and makes the so they start out by determining the scope of the traffic study. So they will determine how much is included in that traffic study, if it's the average daily trips, or if it's the average daily trips and then the average daily trips on the connecting roads, if it's arterial or if it's a local road. And then they can also determine if there are required improvements that need to be made either to the road, so like a right turn only entry or an acceleration or deceleration lane, they would make those determinations through the traffic study. If it's the state, then the state would make those recommendations on what the traffic study needs to include and then how it needs to be implemented for development.
And if it's county?
If it's county, then it's the Roads and Bridges Department.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I could see the fear there, for instance, road and bridges, for example. What if they said, this is not gonna work? Or would they have the authority to say that? I mean, could they hold up a,
They can
if
set
if the
requirements.
processes you go through, Vivian, and if there's concern there, or,
That's on roads and bridges. That's their department. Once they sign off on it, we just move forward. That's their department.
So if they don't sign off on it, say Roads and Bridges says, no, this road can't stand that, what happens at that point? I'm just
Whatever Kyle has to do with the developer, they have their conversations and figure it out. And until they figure it out, it just sits out there.
Mr. Chairman, I could see somebody not having the guts to do that.
Well, we had the other subdivisions with an acre lots in the cliffs. That's up in the hills, and the grade is just at times horrendous, trying to find an acre that you can build, or place you can build a house. This is after all the grading that has been done here, because I've been by there several times, this is almost flat to that, yet they're quarter acre and half acre lots, and we're packing 4 and 5 houses on an acre. And from this, I don't see a whole lot of green space in this subdivision where, I mean, we're not saving any trees to give us a little bit of oxygen to breathe once they put all these houses in there. There's no place for anything other than to park your car and go in your house.
Not required.
See, we can go in and require them to have green space if we want to, or we can, I mean, this is already in the way.
Well, I understand that part. I'm just saying,
We need to plan
I mean,
ahead.
this is something we should have looked at long before.
Well, then let's do it now.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, the ones that are in the cliffs, they are in the lake overlay. We do have density in the lake
Right, there,
overlay.
and there's a lot more space in there too.
Right, and obviously it's the cliffs, they're not gonna
Right.
build on an eighth of an acre. But that's the only place we do have the density is in that lake overlay.
Sorry.
Any other
Continue,
questions? So we can keep looking at this one if y'all want to, or we can keep talking about it.
I'm ready for the next one.
Yes, sir, let's move
So
on.
it's done, I mean, there's nothing we can.
All right, this is Elizabeth Lane. Sorry, I'm trying to get the GIS over there too.
The access for this and it'll be off 28?
Yes, sir. Both accesses will be off 28.
Can we go
Nothing's
back
coming
to the
off the
county
street
map?
farm.
Portion?
So it's that piece and the one below it there. They're combining those two.
So
James, the other one, no,
Yeah.
that one.
This mouse.
that piece probably been for sale for 30 years.
This is 126 lots. About that same size as the last one.
Is that off of 29 acres?
No, it's these, so it's this parcel and this parcel. You can see the shape
Okay,
right here, kind of,
so it's 29 plus whatever that other one was.
this one. This one.
Went down to 36, so you got 65 acres, roughly over. And there's how many homes on that?
126.
Where on 28 is that, Mike?
It's right next to that next big development that's there. From the road, you see the brick buildings.
It's between Valleyland and Miracle Circle.
Right next to the Chamber of Commerce there, just
Oh,
there.
okay, yeah,
You
right.
see the
Before you-
big office buildings complex? It's the gates just beyond that, or the subdivision that you see next
So
to it.
it's going back towards Sheep Farm Road.
Yeah, this is that big piece of acreage that's bigger in front of it. It's a great location for subdivision. It looks like access in 28 that way.
It was a farm, Mr. Chairman. It was.
At one time, I remember that.
Okay.
Do they have sewer in there, James?
Yes.
I would
I
assume
know they were
so.
working on it, I didn't know if they got it.
I would assume so.
Okay. Next.
This is Pier North. And this one is a little bit different. So this is set up, the top half, this is single-family residences, and then the bottom, these are all townhouses. And you can see the lot lines in here on the townhouses, so those are connected. This was one of the BZA cases from last November, where they got the setbacks removed, so they have zero lot lines, zero setbacks, for these townhouses to be individual. And, so, I don't know where this is already.
Can I ask the staff a question, please?
Please.
Is one of the requirements, you're talking about people that have to sign off on this, is, you may have mentioned it, Vivian, I'm sorry, but fire, EMS, sheriff deputies,
Fire.
fire? Okay, who handles patrol? I mean, is that one of the people that, no, just fire?
It's, yeah. It's-
Emergency services umbrella covers all that.
It's the fire marshal, is the one that does it.
Okay. Are they, this may be a question for later, or an answer. Density-wise, are we supposed to have X number of,
We don't have a density requirement.
okay, so let me rephrase my question. How do we make sure we have enough fire, enough EMS, enough deputies to cover this number of houses? Do they need to be a substation there from the county that's closer? Who would, just valid questions.
Probably the county council, wouldn't it be?
I mean, emergency services would determine the fire.
The sheriff will probably be the one to determine if there's a police substation needs to be, depending on the crime rate or what have you in that area. Right now, we're below the minimum standards on having enough police officers in this county.
Okay.
We don't even have the minimum number that we should have for a county our size.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I was saying county council is because what's typically happening is you get this growth and then it creates problems, there's complaints, and then people react to those problems. So it's not a, let's think this ahead. And
Exactly right. Everybody's reactive, not proactive.
it's kind of the nature of the beast.
It is.
Next.
So this is the peer, I'm sorry, this is back to the student, we're gonna talk about this, do y'all wanna talk about this anymore, or?
Yep.
Okay. This is Pier South. This is another very similar, and it is right here.
That's crazy. 10,000 people living right there.
This is again, 143, single family, and then another 33 of the larger.
Okay.
That it, Mr. James?
No, I got one more for you. This is Wells Station, so this is one more. The Wells Highway.
Can I bring up some concern about that one, guys?
That's the one going up the hill, right?
Sorry to be so,
I mean,
sorry, but this is just in my wheelhouse. Who's been by that one?
yep, I have several times.
It's straight up the hill.
Straight up a hill.
Straight up the hill. How could that have ever been approved, guys? How?
Terraces.
I mean, there's no way.
Yeah,
We have snow once every 3 years that anybody would be able to stop coming down that hill. I mean, there's no way. That goes to tell you there's, I'm gonna say corruption, but I wish I could think of another word, but there's no way that a egress and ingress could be granted there.
Give us-
Again, we have no power. We looking in the past here. We really need to look in the future, and that is a prime example of where something shouldn't be. And that wasn't even farmland, and I'm a farm guy, guys. That's just woods, so, that appalls me.
Pat, we keep talking about they shouldn't be there, they shouldn't be there. We're going into private property rights. People, these are all, most of these areas that we looked at, with exception of the ones in the cliffs and all, these are all in control-free areas. We can't be telling people what they can and can't do on land that they bought, they pay tax on, that for some reason they decided to sell. If we start doing that, then we need to send a letter. And I know y'all don't like to send letters to council, but we need to send one to them and say, you need to change the name of control-free to, maybe we need to control you people, or something, instead of control-free. Control-free means control-free. We already have setbacks. What else we have in control-free? It's pretty much it. Just setbacks. We're controlling to that point, but if we're gonna start putting restrictions on, and I get your point on the subdivisions, but if we start putting restrictions on private property, who's to say we don't tell we live here and our next door neighbor puts up something in their yard and we say, nope, you can't do that, because it's offensive to me. I mean, we've got a point to where we've got to either continue with control-free or totally do away with it and zone this control. And so, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. I think maybe I go back to my original comment. We've looked at all of this. Are we going to do anything about it, or are we just going to not plan for the future? You talk about green space, we talk about setbacks. Do we need to take a look at that in certain aspects of this developments that we're seeing for in the future? Or do we need to just sit here and do nothing to plan for the future? That's the question. Well, I see there's no.
Our role is to plan for the future. One of the things that concerns me most in this is not an overlay for density. You know, density is certainly one of the reasons why, you know, folks are doing those townhouses. Lack of any restrictions.
Well, then you get back to affordability too. So I go back to my core question, are we gonna try to look at anything to try to plan for the future, or are we just gonna ignore it and just talk?
Can I comment, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank Mr. Smith for his comments there. He's got a great point. But Mr. Smith, seems like every time I turn around, I'm told we can't do that. We can't implement impact fees. We can't do a bond. We can't control people's property rights. I'd like to find that caveat to where you're right. Let's have a minimum. If you're going to develop 50 acres, you need to leave a 5-acre green space. Thank you, sir. And where we start, I don't know, but all I get is you can't do that. I see other counties implementing minimum lot size. I see other counties doing density control. I see other counties, and these are reactions that are, you know, Greenville County is growing, guys. It's spilling over to here, and the counties surrounding Greenville County are like, whoa, wait a minute. Greenville County's got all the industry and all the high-paying jobs, getting all the taxes. We're building houses and getting a little tax money off property. But Mr. Smith, I hope that with your help and maybe some other folks, we can get some of these answers to some of these questions. What can we do, guys? And you know, I've heard all here, like Mr. Smith said, all I've been told is we can't do that. We got a lot we cannot do, but what can we do? Thank you.
Anything else, James?
Not for me, I mean,
Anything else from,
So I guess we're not gonna do anything.
Well, we need a motion.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, where would the motion come from and what?
anybody got a motion they'd like to make?
I'd like to make a motion, but I don't know what I can motion. I don't know what we can suggest. I don't know, because like I said, all I'm told is we can't do anything.
Where do you want to start?
That's a trick question.
Gathering information.
I'm thinking tonight's meeting was, this part of it was simply so that we could be aware of what subdivisions were coming in, not necessarily to change it. I don't disagree that that it's a conversation to talk about, but I don't know that, and if somebody wants to make a motion that this be dealt with in the future, but I think right now, what we've been doing is just been getting information from staff as to what subdivisions are coming about.
but we see a problem, and we're not addressing the problem. We're not planning for the future.
And we've been kicking that can for 5 years.
I know that.
And I'm not opposed to that conversation, but we've got a big agenda here, and I was thinking tonight was to kind of go through, and we have become again aware that there is density issues out there that should we be addressing them and how? And I don't disagree that we shouldn't be addressing them and how.
Mr. Chair, before we come back, I'll gather some information of what my motion would be or my recommendation would be before our next meeting. And I will have a suggestion of what, but I gotta know, I gotta find out before I make a motion, sir, what we can and cannot do.
And I'll second it when you come up with it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay?
So you want to put this subject back on the agenda for next meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you guys for listening.
Not these subdivisions.
Not the subdivision, but
The
the,
discussion of density or whatever.
right.
Just subdivisions.
Can I speak?
Go ahead, Dave.
I would recommend, if you guys want to bring something to the table, go through the comprehensive plan, look to see what applies here, and then you can propose something. A motion that's clear and understandable and compliant with the comprehensive plan. And then we'll see where that goes. That's all I have.
All right. Anything further on the active subdivision under review? If not, we'll move to sidewalk subcommittee update.
Okay. We have, I'm gonna make a motion right now about the sidewalk.
You want to tell the update first?
I was wanting to make the motion and then I'll go through the
Mr.
update.
Chairman, we
Okay?
do have the other comments for the sidewalk.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and do, the public comment first. Mr. Tom Markovich sent an email.
Yeah, Mr. Markovich couldn't be here this evening, but he did send in some comments for y'all to keep in mind. And I'll just read those directly to y'all. I would like to comment in regards to the Planning Commission's effort on sidewalks. I had mentioned at a previous meeting that there are legislative tools that could be used to remedy the sidewalk issue. The SC Residential Improvement District Act, SC Code Title VI, Chapter 35, allows local jurisdictions to allow for groups of property owners, by petition, to establish districts which operate similarly to special purpose districts. These districts can make improvements such as and including sidewalks and pay for and maintain those improvements with assessments that only apply to those properties in the district. This is perhaps something the sidewalk committee could look at and consider. Thanks, Tom Markovich. And he also included that Title VI, Chapter 35. And this will be in the draft of the minutes as well.
Now talk, Mike.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion. I move that the draft sidewalk revision be accepted as presented and that it be forwarded to David Root for review and input. It should be returned to the Planning Commission for final approval. You have it in front of you there, and what we did was...
I'd like to second it. I'd like to second that.
Oh, okay, thank you, I'm sorry. What we did was, we looked at three options, and this is the option that we decided on that would best be doable in the atmosphere that we're in. Essentially, what it says is,
What were can you tell us the three options first?
well, the first one was not to do anything. That's the one that everybody in the planning, seems to like. Don't do anything, don't change anything. The second option was to have sidewalks in the county right-of-way, and after a period of time, the responsible persons or group for maintaining them and for liability would be the county. And then the third option was to have sidewalks built to South Carolina DOT standards in the county right-of-way, but the liability and the maintenance of it would be the responsibility of the HOA or the entity that is managing that property. And that's essentially what you have here in subparagraph Q. I'm not going to read through it here, but we went over it in detail, the subcommittee did. And we think that this is a very, very well written, and it essentially says that the HOA or the entity will be responsible for the maintenance of it and the liability of it for the future. And when you get down to subparagraph R, we looked at private roads and the need for sidewalks in private roads. And essentially, we wrote that the same except for one small revision there. and that is, when you have that private road, there is a small part that goes from the sidewalk to the edge of the right-of-way that has to be built to a certain standard, and that standard is going to be required to be in the developer's. The developer is going to have to provide that standard, and it'll be done by an engineer that's qualified for South Carolina and stamped. So let's say you have 20 homes with a private road, you would only have that one time that you would have to have that small section that would be engineered if you wanted to connect to the sidewalk in the private road. It sounds like a lot, but we went back and forth in that subcommittee, and this is what you have. So if you have any questions, Mike, you add to it, please.
I was on that subcommittee, and so I wanted to recap real quick. You know, sidewalks is something we've talked about for a long time. We've talked about sidewalks from the issue of the CAT bus. We've talked about sidewalks as an issue because of traffic, as far as trying to eliminate some of the road traffic, especially as we're kind of over towards the Clemson area, getting those people out of their cars and onto their bicycles, or do something to get some of the road relief at some of the intersections and things like that. We talked about the CAT bus, the fact that the CAT bus picks up anywhere on 123, and you never know where they're going to stop because there are no sidewalks, and CAT says, well, we can't say you have to go here if you can't safely get to there, wherever there might be. So that's why they pick up anywhere on the road. So there's a lot of elements that have come together that said, well, there might be a need for sidewalks on occasion, but as our county has written ordinances, you can't do it whether you want to or not. So we've said that there is a need to allow for it, or at least have it as an option if the developer says they want to do it. But then in talking with Roads and Bridges, they've said, hey, the problem is that we're in charge of these sidewalks, and there's a 1/4 inch lift on one of the sidewalks that is sunk, and somebody wants that one little space fixed. Well, that's 1/10 of a cement truck. Then we got to buy 4 yards of cement to fix that one little spot, and it's problematic for us to have to do that at a county level, because now somebody gets hurt when we're waiting to be able to fix 3 or 4 spots to be able to use that concrete that we've ordered. So we understood real quickly that to put this burden on the county is extremely cost prohibitive. But again, there's still a need on occasion to be able to provide sidewalks. Again, whether that's something down in the pier with these students needing to get access out to where they could get to a CAT bus stop, or whether it's somebody who's built a small subdivision of affordable housing that needs to be able to walk to some location downtown or into some municipality. So in doing that, we said, okay, since there is a need, and yet we have a prohibition against it, we probably shouldn't continue doing nothing. We probably should address it. Then as far as county taking it over, we said, well, that's prohibitive, because now the county becomes liable once they've been notified that there's a problem, yet they need to fix 30 yards of sidewalk, and they got to wait till that's available to do rather than just one little crack in front of somebody's house. So we said, well, why don't we just make it the HOA or the entity responsible for that section of development, that if they want to do it, they can do it, and the onus is on them to keep it up. And so that was why this came about, was to say the option is available for you, but you're going to own it, maintain it, and it's going to be recognized either in the HOA covenants and restrictions or described on the plat. I do see that it says and. I was thinking that it said and or described on the plat, somewhere that it's able to be recognized by an individual homeowner that they are in a place where they, as a homeowner, have some responsibility to it. And their survey, which would show up in a plat at their closing, would identify that that sidewalk is a privately maintained sidewalk. And that's both in the county right-of-way on county roads that are turned over to the county, whether that's a subdivision or whatever, where the roads are built to a county standards and then turned over to the county. This would be a sidewalk within their right-of-way, would have to be built to a certain standard and then maintained by that HOA or entity that is wanting that sidewalk. And if it's a private road, same thing would apply, that somehow it would be recognized on that plat that on this private road, that's also a privately maintained sidewalk. All this would do then is give the option out there for a developer to be able to integrate a sidewalk into the project if it benefited in some form or fashion. And I think from a county standpoint, there's a tremendous benefit if the developer's willing to pay for it. So that was where this came from.
Thank you.
So is the intent for only new developments, or is this able to be implemented by existing developments?
I don't know that was addressed, but I think if an entity was out there and they had a subdivision and they all got together and voted to do it and they wrote it into their HOAs and they platted it out to meet the specifications of approval process, that go for it.
So this is only in subdivisions, it's not, you're not talking about down county roads?
It's anywhere where that entity gets together. Now, I guess technically, 17 people on a county road could get together and all agree, we'd like to pay for a sidewalk down here, and they could submit those plans to the county for approval based on the fact that they've had it drawn up and that they've had it put together and that they know that they have formed an organization, whether that be an HOA, probably not, but an organization of some extent to be able to take it over, to own it and to maintain it and to recognize it.
Pat?
I think you guys done great work. That's a lot of in-depth information there. The question I would have would be, if a HOA has agreed to do this, who's to hold their feet to the fire that the money will be there when it's needed to be done? Is it gonna be a contingency, you're gonna require them to have a contingency fund for sidewalk maintenance in 15 years, or, cause I could see the picture, Mr. Johnson, of a sidewalk being built, beautiful sidewalk, it sinks, then you can't find the homeowner, or they don't have no money. And I know there's a lot of HOA communities around, and, you know, somebody don't pay their dues and their funds are depleted and they can't. So how would you assure us that the funds are there to?
I don't know I hear what you're saying. I don't know that that's the right question, because then we go back and go, well, who pays for that entrance? And is there an assurance that if the entrance gate falls down, that people are going to be able to get out of their place?
That's an issue, that happens. Yeah.
I think that it's not the county's responsibility. I don't think it's the county's, somebody may call and say, my HOA, their gate broke and I can't get out, and you come fix it, it's not the county's responsibility, and the county doesn't have any liability to it.
That's correct. I would
And
agree
that's where this is written, is that it takes the liability off of the county.
Right.
If there's a crack out there that's not fixed by the HOA and they choose not to fix it, it's between the homeowner and their HOA. It's not between the county, and I don't think the county should require any bonding or anything like that. It's up to the organization. The nice thing is by having it platted and having it written in the covenants and restrictions, that homeowner, when they purchased the property, agreed and accepted that liability when they signed on the dotted line that they were purchasing that property.
So y'all feel good with it that, okay?
Well,
I'm with you.
we'll let David Root take a look at it, you know. and,
Right.
Then it'll come back to us again.
Well, I guess I could just see the situation of somebody like, I don't have the money. Or
Oh,
our HOA don't
I
have the
agree,
money.
but I think that our job here was to protect the county. If
I
the
agree with you.
homeowner needs to sue their HOA, that's oftentimes has to be done.
Right.
But I don't think it's the county's responsibility, and I don't think that we need to step in any more than to say, if you want to do it, these are the rules you got to follow.
Thank you. Y'all done a good job. Thank you.
So, just for clarification, I'm playing catch-up because I wasn't on the committee. So right now, Chapter 26-3 Quebec says sidewalks shall not be located within the road right-of-way. So what we're proposing is to replace that one statement with these two items, Chapter 26-3 Q and R, that gives flexibility.
That is correct.
That's right.
And then
It's just flexibility is what it is.
it gives flexibility to allow a developer, should they want to do it, the option to do it rather than just a hard no. And again, talking to Roads and Bridges, it was at the time simply a no because, okay, utility issue, some issue, the road gets torn up. Now, people are calling the county, hey, you need to come fix the road. Well, it wasn't the county that messed it up. It was the utility guy when he had to build his house or whatever. This just takes the onus off of the county, but allows it to take place.
You want me to read my motion again?
Please.
All right.
I like it.
I move that the draft sidewalk revision be accepted as presented and that it be forwarded to David Root for review and input. It should be returned to the planning commission for final approval.
We have Ms. Gollin second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
I got one more motion, Frankie.
go ahead. You
I
still got
move
the
that the
floor.
function of the sidewalk subcommittee be dissolved. In other words, we're out of business.
I'll second.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
We're out of business, Mike.
Cool.
all
We
right.
got a new one for you.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, he's wanting to start a new one now, so.
We got a new one for you.
I figured you were coming up with one.
Okay, let's go to item number 10 is flag lot policy review. Mr. James.
Yes, sir. This is something that's come up in the past and kind of has been a little bit of a rub between DOT and the county. And basically, if a parcel is located on a state road, so on a DOT road, we don't do anything with their encroachment permit. We look at the requirements we have to approve their plat. And right now, flag lots are allowed in control free. And I've included that in y'all's backup tonight, where flag lots basically are allowed, and where control free doesn't have this, the regulation on it. DOT, however, does have standards, and typically do not like flag roads. They prefer a shared road or a private drive, kind of as shown on the bottom of the page in front of you from their ARMS manual. Basically, this eliminates driveways in quick succession. They prefer to have, it's either 50 or 60 feet, 60, it is 60 feet between driveways. And right now, with flag lots, we allow them to be very narrow. So you could potentially have multiple accesses very close together that are, some of DOT sees as dangerous and hazardous and create unsafe road conditions. So right now, we're approving plats because we don't have anything that says that we cannot. And DOT is getting them, DOT has a mandate to allow ingress and egress to property if they are connected to a state road. So the DOT is kind of not able to follow their own policy because of our policy. And we want to make you guys aware, if there's anything you all would like to consider about that, to kind of get some harmony between the two agencies, because we do like to be good neighbors.
What would you recommend, James?
I would recommend considering adopting the DOT standard. But again, there's 7 unique voices up here that can have some input.
Go ahead, sir.
I'll make a motion that we revise our standards to agree with the South Carolina DOT standards for driveways with flag lots.
And I'll second that.
All right.
Is that open for discussion?
Yeah, open for discussion.
So when we define that as a flag lot, does that also affect development of subdivision of flag lots in subdivisions?
If they're in control free, it would, yes.
So does everybody understand what that impact does? So what you're saying is, like the first picture here, you're telling a developer that he could not, if his property line, now this is a picture of what looks like the lake, but it could be the same thing on a farm. If your property narrows down and then expands back out, and you've got an area that your farm narrows down into a small lane and then opens back up, you're screwed. You can put 3 houses back there for your grandkids, but that's it, based on doing that with flag lots. So you can't go sell it, you can't give it to your grandkids, you can't do whatever. If your property narrows down to a certain extent, it becomes a flag as it opens back up, and I don't think that that's right to just blanket those docks in.
Well, if it's not adjacent to the road, it wouldn't matter.
It does when you start building that development, because it's then a road in.
I still stand with my motion.
Is there any compromise, James, that you can think of?
I'm sure there is. This might be a good opportunity for another subcommittee if you'd like some discussion with one or two people to kind of figure out some compromises or however y'all like to proceed.
Why this, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Why this has come about is developers try to save money doing this, and I don't know if this picture can be shown any other way. Where the road is here, and you have a house with a driveway, and then you have a driveway going to a house back here. Your driveway, a driveway going to a house back here, a driveway here, and a driveway here, and a driveway here for a house. Whereas the developer should have put a road coming in here and then turning these into that road and these out of that road. But they're taking advantage of a road that exists at a state level specifically and saving themselves money by not having to build the infrastructure. So in these cases, I can totally see why, did y'all see this? Totally see why that infrastructure should have been done by the developer who was, again, trying to make it affordable for people. So when you change that, you are hurting that affordability factor, but this is what's being done and it causes a lot of driveways to happen. But by blanketly doing this, it's affecting a whole lot of other things just by saying, yeah, let's do this. Did I say that wrong?
No.
Or is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, I think, well, there's lots of reasons they do it, and then you also have parcels that are really deep sometimes, that are not very wide, and it's usually in maximizing the number of available lots that you can service.
So I think if forming a subcommittee might be a great idea. Because there are needs for doing something about what are currently flagged lots.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that Mr. Smith made.
Mike made it. Why don't I withdraw the motion and we form I'll withdraw that motion, and then if that's accepted, then I will make a motion that we form another subcommittee to study flagged lots.
You went out of business for 2 minutes.
I'm sorry?
You went out of business for 2 minutes.
Well, we'll put on change hats.
Mr. Cody, can I make a comment, sir?
Go ahead.
Apparently this is already adopted in other counties to meet DOT standards.
Yes, in other counties.
Why we want to be the oddball out, guys? I mean, I understand the concern of property rights, but this is in my wheelhouse. It slows things down. But it's generally accepted statewide, apparently from what staff says.
I'll tell you what, why don't I just go ahead and withdraw my motion, and then I will make a motion that we form a subcommittee to deal with flag lots and report back to the planning commission their recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to form a subcommittee. Any discussion about that?
Are you gonna be on it?
I'll be on it.
That's what I figured.
All right,
I guess you and I are gonna hook up again?
if there's not any further discussion, all those in favor of forming a subcommittee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
6-1.
Good for you, Pat.
Sorry, I was just making sure we got the vote right. It was 6-1.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, is there
I
any,
shot myself in the foot.
any
Now I
further
want
business?
some help on the other stuff.
Anything else anybody's got to say? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?